Hey everyone, Aaron here from Ultra RC Hobbies. So we're going to continue on today with our TRX4M build series. So this is series part number 3. So today we're going to talk about a couple things. So now we've run our TRX4M a couple times. We're going to talk about charging. So the normal TRX4M comes with a basic USB charger that has your port adapter on the end. So we think this is a phenomenal charger if you're going to be out at the lake doing stuff like that. It just takes a foam brick or a computer, anything like that to charge. So this is a phenomenal option to keep your car charged. But what happens when you want to put your battery in storage mode? You're not going to use it for, a month or two. The typical was run it fully dead and charge it for half the time. So if it was 45 minutes on average to charge, maybe only charge it for 20. But Traxxas has released a better solution for this with this port adapter. So now we can actually charge and storage charge this battery with a Traxxas ID charger. So we're going to walk through some of that. We have a live ID charger here in the shop. So we're going to walk you through all the cool things that come with that option. Next thing up, we were talking about doing low gears, but Mr. Diebert was like, hey, instead of doing crawl gears, let's do a 2-speed. So this keeps us with a crawl gear, and this also keeps us with a high gear option with the mechanical switch on the side. So super jazzed up to install that today, get a little bit more smooth wheel spin, and hopefully help that motor not amp out. You probably saw in the last video, once we did add the weight, you could get it bound up and you heard that motor pretty much just amping out and really struggling to continue on. And then last but not least, while we're doing the trans, we're also going to do a high clearance link kit from Hobby Details. So you can see there's some option links in there that do have some angle. So hopefully help us not get hung up on some of the parts of the course. So let's get it right into it and let's go and install transmission. So we're gonna unbox the brand new 2-speed high-low transmission from Traxxas. So like I said on the bench up front, we did notice a little bit of arcing out and things like that with the 2-speed or the single speed without putting crawl gears on. So let's go through what's all included in this kit. So it's going to be your 2-speed instruction manual. Pretty basic. There is essentially just a wire retainer and some other stuff that they're talking about, a couple screws, and then all of the good things that you get inside of the transmission. So what you'll notice is there's going to be a little bit more in the gearing. There's a little chart here. So the biggest thing that we're going to run into is just what low gear is going to do. So the standard low gear with the 9776R is going to be 40.3 to 1. We're only getting 32.7 to 1, but we are getting a little bit of a higher second gear. And that's going to be 9.9 to 1. So pretty excited about this. Backside just gives us French. So obviously that's not going to work. There is going to be the optional gear. So this is the 22 tooth gear. So if we go back to the chart, that tells us the 22 tooth gear will give us 19.1 to 1 in low gear, and high gear is going to be 5.8. So a little bit quicker. So for anybody that has like a TRX4MT, anything like that for Monster Truck, that's going to be probably a better choice to get a little bit more speed if that's what you're hunting for. There's going to be your wire retainer clip. And last but not least is the transmission. So why this transmission is a little bit more expensive is it does come with a brand spanking new 180T transmission. So it's a pretty nice little unit. Very, very, very big in comparison to the Stalker. And then this is just going to be your switch for high and low. So the nice part is once this is in the truck, you can essentially just use your finger from the bottom side of the chassis without taking the body off to switch from high to low. So pretty nice little unit. Really not that crazy to get in and out, but let's start ripping the truck apart and get this installed. So to take these transmissions out, they're super, super easy. There's 4 screws on the top and there's 2 drive shafts that you obviously have to take out. The one thing I will say that we get a lot of questions about is why once you do the 4 screws, so 1, 2, 3, 4 off the transmission, why doesn't it just pull out? That's because Traxxas has the serial number sticker right on the front of the battery tray there. And that actually sticks to the front of the gear cover. So what we do is we pull these 2 screws out here. So one here and one on the back side. And then what happens is this, you can wiggle off and you can hear it. The sticker's stuck, and that's where the sticker sticks to the front of the gear tray or the gear cover on the stock Traxxas transmission. So now we can pull the 4 screws. 1, 2, 3, and this last one's a little bit buried because what happens is you have all of your wires and all the other stuff that usually gets retained by the battery tray. So since we pulled the battery tray out, it makes this a little bit easier to get to, and it also helps us get the drive shaft screws out as well. So there's the little screws in the drive shaft right there. You just pull out, and be careful when you reinstall these. They don't need to be super tight. I see a lot of people actually tighten these down too much and stripping them. So once that's out, that is what we have left. So now we can unhook the motor, which on the ESC or ECM in this case, it has a plug. We just unplug it and we'll cut the zip tie, and then we can thread all the new stuff back in. So we got the old transmission out. We took the drive shafts off of there. We have the new transmission, and the Traxxas wants us to install the drive shafts. So all we did is insert those 2 screws and put the half shafts back on. So now we have to install this bracket. This goes onto the front just like so. And there's 2 screws that Traxxas includes now for mounting this bracket. So 1 and number 2. So now comes the fun part. We get to key in the drive shafts into the truck. So you can only put these in one way, and it's usually a pain in the butt because you have a whole bunch of stuff in the way. I'll usually just roll the front wheels, get the front keyed in first, and then you can kind of just pick the back side of the transmission up usually and roll the truck to get this keyed in. And the trick is not to get so much angle on it that you undo the front. So it looks good. So now we'll make sure all these wires are out of the way. Just ever so gently give that a push down, and we're good. So now Traxxas wants us to run this motor lead through this slot here. So we'll just pick up this ever so slightly, run that right under, and make sure we don't pinch it, and push it back down. So we'll probably run all of the wires under there because I think that would be the cleanest. So hopefully they give us enough provision to do this and it doesn't interfere with anything else, but it might. Yeah, I don't think we will be able to. So yeah, now we have a lot of stuff in the way. We can get this on the outside, push that down, still have movement. Well, let's try it. Everything still rolls. Okay, well, let's do that. So now we have 4 new screws. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we use the same screws we had before. So let's lock this transmission in. Okay, so next up, we have to reroute our motor lead back through the battery tray. So this is going to have to go on this side because it's there. And Traxxas does give us a nice slot to run all these wires. Biggest thing is just making sure we can keep them relatively tidy. You don't want too many wires stacking on top of each other because that's when we start having other issues like battery doesn't fit and a whole bunch of other fun stuff. So we'll just run it like so. And then everything comes back up top, and that's what this little hook is for. So the wires just go back into there. This one, and then motor lead. And then we can just grab a zip tie and get that all tidied up. But before we do that, we have these 2 little keys, so one there and one there, that this has to go back into the frame rail to lock our battery hold down back in since we undid the screws. And that goes just like that. So now you can grab our cap head screws, screw this back together. Okay, so we have our wires nice and routed, 2 screws in the battery hold down. We got a zip tie on there and it's flush cut, so it's not going to cut us every time we want to work on something. So all that's left is to plug in the motor. You can only plug this in one way, and we are done. So we have 2-speed installed, battery tray back in, The wires we did get to route underneath that hold down, all of them. We still have all the ability to shift. Shouldn't be too much of an issue. I might throw another zip tie right here, so cut this one and just route the zip tie all underneath that. It should give us enough clearance to do it, just so we don't have the issue of trying to wedge your finger, especially when you can't see, to what's going on. So I think that's a pretty tidy install, nothing too major there. That took a whole whopping 5 minutes. So thanks Traxxas for putting in the motor. That makes life so much quicker and more simple. So let's get on to throwing in the links. So we started the process by taking off the wheels and tires, as well as the hexes and pins. So if you didn't watch last video, all we have to do to take the hexes off is slide a little screwdriver behind it and pop them off, because what we need to get into are going to be the link bolts. So lower links, we'll have to take the shock bolt out, because that goes all the way through the link into the diff housing and threads into the bottom side. And once we take that shock off, it makes it so much easier to get into the shock bolts here. And on the chassis side, you have your 2 bolts on each side for the skid. And then you have your upper link mounts, which are these ones here. And then you'll notice on the front, it's pretty much the exact same process. The only thing that makes it super complicated is there's one screw that has a bottom side through the servo mount. So when you loosen that off, the servo mount will move. So I'm just gonna rip everything apart in time lapse here, and then we'll get back to it. So we have all the links off the truck, everything disconnected. So we have the front end, front lowers, front uppers, rear lowers, rear uppers. So let's get a weight, since this is a build series, of what we're going to add now with these aluminum links with the brass eyelets. So let's get all of our stalkers. I don't think these are going to weigh a whole pile of a lot. So what we got there? 6 grams. Nothing too serious there. So let's go to the metal ones. And we have 20 grams. So that is an increase of, what is that, 14 grams? So now if we put that into our total, so the total weight before, we'll grab our sheet here. Total weight before was an increase of 156 grams. So if we add another 14 to that, we'll be at 170 grams. So it's a pretty good increase. So now we can pretty much do the exact same thing, but just backwards of installing these links. Biggest thing I will say with the front end is it's always the shock bolt that's kind of a pain in the butt, because you have this big steering knuckle, words are hard, that kind of impedes it. So what we do is we kind of put the bolt in already, and it just makes it easier to kind of start everything. So we'll get all of these installed, because it's a pretty straightforward process, and we'll be back in a sec. We have the high clearance links installed. So as you can see, the bend is closest to the front or the rear axle. So that gives us the highest point possible. And now honestly, our biggest thing is going to be hitting the drive shaft on the pumpkin. So that gives us a ton of clearance, also gave us a little bit of weight. Biggest thing I will say with doing any aluminum or steel links on any of these small mini micros is start at the top. So do your upper links first and then work towards your bottom. Again, we're dealing with those pesky drive shafts that you have to key back into place, but pretty darn easy and simple install. Nothing all that crazy by any means. And the other thing I do recommend is just make sure you go through and cycle the shocks, make sure everything works as it should. Sometimes these eyelets can get a little bit pushed out since it is an aluminum rod with a brass eyelet. The eyelet itself can move left or right just ever so slightly. So you got to just take a pair of pliers or even the screw and put the screw through the middle of the eyelet and just give it a wiggle and get that back to its happy place, because now all of the rod ends are moving as they should. So now what we can do is we can install the hexes back on and the wheels and tires, and we'll head out to the crawler course. So now we have our app opened. We are linked to the charger here. So now what this is going to give us is a ton of more information about what's going on with the battery. So if we click the battery info box, it'll open up all of the things that we need to know. So it'll say that it's going to be a LiPo for chemistry. Charge current's going to be 1.6 amps. Currently, we're set up for the balanced charge. We have a capacity of 800 milliamps, which is a little bit off because they only are rated at 750 on the packaging. It's going to be a 2S. We have a 20C discharge rate. And again, it knows everything down to the part number of the battery, so 2821. If we use the arrow buttons on the left in the battery info, we can scroll down and see that our cell voltages are 4.2 and 4.1 volts. Our current total pack voltage is 8.3 volts. So what we can do here is we can hit the start on the right-hand side here, and it'll tell us to press and hold the start on the charger. So when we do that, you hear the beeps. And then what we're going to start seeing here on the right side is it's going to start populating with some information. So it's going to give us a rough estimated time to completion of 8 minutes. Our current charge percentage is 7%, which that's going to go up here pretty quickly because the battery is almost fully charged. And it's also going to show us the milliamps inputted. So what this app is going to do is essentially give you a screen like you would see on some of the fancier chargers. The cool part is we can, again, go through on the left side and click our battery info, still see everything we want, or click down and go into the charge info of how the battery is currently charging. So it's charging a LiPo. We're going to be charging current of 1.3 amps. Our total pack voltage is currently 8.2 volts with a 1.3 amp inputted voltage. And then we have 4.2 volts and 4.2 volts on both of the cells. So we can click out of that. So as you can tell on the right side of the screen, it is increasing the charge progress pretty quickly. As you can see, it's 15, 16%, and we've inputted 24 milliamps. Any given time, we can press and hold the stop charge, and that is going to stop the charge. We can also go in here and change the settings by clicking enter settings. We can also increase or decrease the amount of amperage. So we can go all the way down to 1 amp, which would still take about 45 minutes if this battery is fully dead. Or you can increase, Traxxas is saying 1.6 amps is okay, which would be a 2C charge rate. So there's a whole bunch of different things you can do inside of this. When you go to the next setup, it'll be balance, fast, or storage. So it gives you all of the ability to kind of walk through everything you're going to need to know about the battery itself. So this will also then work for any of the other Traxxas LiPo batteries. The live IDs will do up to a 4-cell LiPo. So if you have a Mini Max, X Max, Max Slash, UDR, Sledge, any of those that take a singular 4S or dual 3Ss, this will also work. These are also available in single or dual options as well. But that port adapter really helps now, because if you don't want to use your battery or your truck for 2 weeks or more, we always do recommend to put it in storage charge, just to ensure that your battery isn't going to be dead when you are ready to go. So whole bunch of stuff to check out. We have everything installed now on the TRX4. We got our 2-speed transmission. We also have our high clearance legs. But before we hit the crawling course, let's see how the crawl gears are in first and how the high-speed gears are in second. So we're going to do a little test here. So right now we are currently in first gear. So that's full speed. So normally these are about 4 miles an hour. This is to the wood, full pin, and that's as fast as it goes. So now the nice part is with the 2-speed, we just have to reach in, find the dial, swing it back, and now this is second gear. So a substantial amount faster than what we were at with first gear. So to do all our crawling, what we're going to do, we're going to put it back in first, and let's check it out. So we know we can do this side with a little bit of wheel spin. So let's see now if the links helped us, and maybe the crawl gears to make it a little bit smoother. So you can see we can kind of approach things a little bit slower without it causing any grief. So you use our bounce technique and kind of get it over. Nope, I don't think it's gonna work. I think with the slow speed, it definitely helps, but you almost need to kind of bounce it up and over, because there's 2 lips that you get stuck in, and that's kind of the one problem we're running into. So let's just try second. Just flip it back. and we'll try a little bit of speed. So you can tell it's definitely not as smooth, a little bit more bouncy, unfortunately. And I don't know. So the one thing is we kind of get bound up a little bit more. And it's... Nope. So the 2-speed now kind of hurt us a little bit in having to try to bounce over this obstacle. It definitely helps us with our slow speed crawling, but it doesn't allow us to bounce over. And the problem now in second, there's a couple times it legitimately amped out and it couldn't bounce over. So I think that's where the next upgrade with the brushless is going to be pretty beneficial. So I can't do it. Maybe we need Chris. Maybe we need Debert. When in doubt, Debert will figure throttle out. Gotta get this wheel over this little lip here. Oh, so close. So that was definitely not doable before. We could not use that slow speed to ramp it up. I think if we had maybe just a little bit more weight and a little bit more wheel spin, it would have been able to drop the nose and been able to go down the downside. So that's a win. We definitely were not able to do that before. But now let's go over to the side that we really struggle with. This side seems to be the hardest side. And again, we haven't seen too many people be able to do it. Because you get to about here and then you can't really do anything. Let's try to wiggle our way over. I can definitely say the low speed gear, we weren't able to do that before. It was just instantly a bounce. So it's still the same kind of issue. You have this weird kind of hump you have to get over, and then you just get the wheel well kind of stuck, and then it doesn't have enough weight to continue to go up. One thing we haven't tried is we haven't tried starting here and seeing if we can kind of climb over. Definitely not the case. So yeah, it's still not enough weight to still turn up that hill. Try for the steeper point. And you just get bound up on the bumper. Not quite. I think we might have to build a little ledge or something to try and help not dig the bumper right on this edge. This course was set up for a 24 scale, so something a little bit shorter in wheelbase compared to what we have. Yeah, you just dig your wheel in there, and you can't really back up because you don't have anything gripping. Yeah, it just kind of continues to pivot because that tire gets jammed in there. Well, I would say the 2-speed was definitely super helpful in the slow speed crawling. The car did not amp out as much, so we weren't putting as much load on the motor. The only problem is now with tight technical crawling, high speeds maybe a little bit too fast. So a little bit different. I think once we do the brushless, it should help us get that little bit more wheel speed back in the low first gear, but still give us all the smoothness that we are kind of hunting for. One huge advantage is the line over here. This one right here. We definitely were not able to do that before with how coggy the motor was, as well as what we were dealing with the links binding up. So the links definitely seem to make a huge difference, and that crawl this way definitely made a huge difference as well. So I'm pretty jazzed up about these updates. Like I said, we added that 14 grams or 16 grams onto the links. So now let's do brushless. Let's talk about brushless on the next episode and see what the new Traxxas brushless system is all about. So thank you everyone so much for watching. We really do appreciate it. Throw a comment down below if you've watched all 3 parts so far. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already to continue with this build. We got a couple more cool things kind of lined up for this, but there's a couple more cool things coming within the next month or so. We're going to talk about the new Traxxas Minimax, talk about that new Jado 4-wheel drive BL2S system coming out that should get announced later this week. So we got a whole bunch of cool things coming just before Christmas time. So the holiday season is right around the corner. So start building a wish list for yourself, or maybe you're fulfilling a wish list for somebody else. So thank you everyone so much for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. And we'll catch you on the next one. Bye.